Good afternoon, everyone. It is mid-August 2022, and we are kicking off our very first podcast of Friends and Brothers. I'm Rob. This is Marcus, and we are here to create Friends and Brothers as a channel to discuss all topics concerning modern men. Our mission is to change lives and be a resource for you to regain your inner yelp. Thanks for tuning in. As we get ramped up, if you like our podcast, don't forget to hit the like button and a subscribe, and let's get started. So, all right, Marcus, this is our first one. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about yourself real quick, or if you want to just get into the topic, getting started.
Yeah, I can talk about myself a little bit.
Just a quick introduction.
All right. Yeah. All right. So just real briefly, my background is as a professional fitness and wellness coach. I also have a background in banking, finance, and various other industries. But at the end of the day, I'm just a regular guy like you. So I'm not going to go into detail about my whole life history and stuff, but I want to give you kind of some initial. I'm dealing with men on a consistent basis, day by day, in the fitness industry because I own a gym, I train clients, I run big personal training companies. And the one thing that has brought a lot to light now working with Rob is that we feel that a lot of not issues, but a lot of topics that we want to talk about from a men's perspective are not getting this candid conversation. So again, my background having dealing with the public on a consistent basis, especially when it comes to health and wellness, is something that I'm going to be bringing to the table today. And you'll get to know me a little bit more as we go on.
Awesome. And again, my name is Rob. I am a Michigan native, Spartan fan through and through. Go Green. It's actually where I met my wife back in 1999. And we've lived in South Florida now about 20 years. I became friends with Marcus back in 1999 when I moved to Atlanta after graduating from Michigan State. I am a husband and father of 3 little children, a soon-to-be 4-year-old, soon-to-be 3-year-old, and a 18, 19-month-old little boy. I am a certified USAT triathlon coach about 5 years now. I've coached athletes out of systemic injury. I've trained athletes for Ironman triathlon, first timers, Boston Marathon qualifiers, and throughout the year, I also conduct different clinics depending on the group and their need in the sport. So usually it's more regulated to swimming and running type of clinics. But those are fun times to meet different groups of people. So let's get started.
Let's get started. All right. So let me ask you this, Rob, based on just our conversations and us getting started with this, have you ever had something that you wanted to get started?
I think this podcast.
Yeah, see, I was just going to say. So that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Wait, I can't wait, but yeah.
I mean, what's held me back from doing a podcast, right? And so I think, it really was great timing, when we were chatting not long ago, and you kind of had a similar idea, right? And that's where this kind of came to fruition. But what's held me back is, in this case, it was kind of not knowing what to do and how to get started. That was kind of really one thing that was holding me back. Another thing that was holding me back was as a triathlon coach, where it's not necessarily my day-to-day job, my 9-to-5er, if you will, right? It's building up my brand has been kind of that big, stepping point and overwhelming point for me, saying, what do I do first?
Sure.
Right. Having a plan, but there's so many different activities to do, as a business owner, which you can attest to. Where do you get started? There's so many questions that can be very overwhelming, right? So that's what's held me back from getting this podcast going. But I think having a teammate, if you will, or partner, really helps move things along. And I think what we've come to an agreement on, I think, is, hey, let's just do it, right? And then we'll learn along the way.
That's right.
And we'll improve, we'll build, and I think, just trusting the process, right? And allowing ourselves to manifest this into something, that we think is going to be outstanding and hopefully inspirational for our viewers.
Well, I want to follow up on some of that because from a starting standpoint, oftentimes we get caught up in the minutia of all the details.
Right.
Like the human condition, whether somebody's going to admit to this or not, they typically want to have the answer before they actually go through the process. So give me the answer first. And then, no, that's not how things happen.
Have you done any Six Sigma training?
Well, I use this example all the time is, oftentimes people are afraid of trying to accomplish something because they've never done it before.
Right.
And through my experience, and again, being a health and wellness and fitness professional, it's more geared around strength. Now, I associate strength not only physically, but mentally and spiritually. But talking from a physical standpoint, it translates. Okay, so when I have someone in front of me that, I can't, say, for example, I can't lift that 50 pounds. Well, I want you to get can't out of your mind. I believe in you, and let's do this. So a lot of what I'll say is going to be proactive around just jump in the deep end of the pool and we're going to learn how to swim together because I know you can do it.
Yeah.
So, that's typically, I think that rings true with so many of us that are out there that when we're trying to get started with something, all right, where do I start? Where does this go from there? You're looking for all these answers.
And it's that wanting to be perfect the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's a
Absolutely.
huge barrier for many of us, including myself, right?
Absolutely.
A huge barrier. We're not going to be. And I have countless examples of my own personal life, whether it's personal and professional, where I know going through it the second time, I'm so much more better at it, right? That's why, like in work, in business, like, the more rehearsal we do going into, maybe a sales pitch or whatever it is,
Right.
the more prepared we are for that, right? And I guess you could say that rehearsal is part of the process that, I think I mentioned a second ago, but I want to reiterate. It's about the process and learning to learn, right? And that's the process that we really want to go through, not just looking at the end result.
Well, everybody, you want to start something, okay, whether it's a business or a weight loss program,
right?
You want to get a new degree, you want to start a family, any number of things. Just we're using the topic as far as getting started. Obviously, some of those are easier than others to get started, but at the end of the day, it's pulling the trigger. It's just getting going, and the momentum of the process is what moves you forward. You learn as you progress, and if you follow any of these prevalent and well-respected leaders that are coaches out there, you can use anybody from Tony Robbins to Jack Canfield to, you name it. They're all going to talk about those same kinds of things. And what we want to do, obviously, is, whittle this down to the guys. If you have something that you want to start, write down some things, write down whatever those things may be, but don't get caught up in the minutia of how to get to, just get one of those things started that day. Don't sit on your hands and be like, well, hell, I don't know where, I don't know if it's going to make me money. I don't know if it's going to get me my degree. I don't know. Well, I don't know if I walk across the street if I'm going to get hit. And I'm sure you've heard that analogy also in the past, but
right.
The getting started process is as simple as like your infant that's learning how to walk one step in front of the other, and that's it, right?
Yeah, and I guess you could say it's like my son, he's in the stages of learning how to ride a bike, right?
There you go.
We didn't just throw him on a bike though, right? Without training wheels, and we're starting with introducing him to, it's called the balance bike, which they didn't exist when I was a kid, but it's a fantastic mechanism. At first, he didn't really like it, right? But he tried it. He was interested in it. He tried it a little bit. We put it away after a couple of days because he was rejecting it, right?
Yeah.
2 months later, brought it back out, tried it a little bit again. He struggled it for a couple tries, but then he got it right pretty quickly, and he's just tooling around. He can just tool around the house, even house is designed that he can do that, but he's just he let go of that fear eventually, and said, okay, you know, we're going to do this. Now he's going to graduate into an actual bike. We're not introducing him to training wheels even, right?
No, that's awesome.
So it's just going straight into bike, because the biggest thing was taking it piece by piece and saying, okay, we're just going to start here, right? You're going to start with a balance bike, right? We're not going to give you a whole big bike with training wheels. We're giving you a balance bike because you need to learn balance first, right? Learn how to balance, then the rest is just going to come with it right away, right?
Well, look at those just life skills right there that you've got. So that's a perfect example of when somebody's getting started, they get afraid, so they step in and they do it a couple times. They kind of touch it,
and they're like, "Yeah, it's not working. Done."
What is it?
Right?
And back, right, and you back away, and you kind of put it in the closet or put it on the desk, or all right, I'm not gonna. Right, and then you go back to it because you've already kind of warmed up to it a little bit.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I really did want to do this, but I just couldn't figure out how before, right? And it just wasn't clicking.
It did bite me on the ass that bad, so I'm okay. I'm not dying here. So the next step is you go
try
back
again.
to it. Well, you know, that I think that's a really good story because, you know, we want to have all these answers. We want to have the perfect body, or we want to have the perfect bank account. Or we have all these wants, but it takes getting out of the concrete boots that are keeping us in one place and not adapting to all these things that you're going to fail at to get to success. That's the main thing. Where you gotta I look at it this way. You have to be comfortable with failure. In order to be comfortable with failure, you have to try. And if you don't try, you're not going to get anywhere.
Actually, I think the back of my shirt says "Be comfortable being uncomfortable." So I don't know. You tell.
Well, there you go. It's represented well
today.
Does it
say that?
There you go. Right, I got it. Yep, that's exactly right.
See,
you got to get out of the comfort zone.
You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Right?
Yeah. It's not necessarily pain. It's just uncomfortable. It's not.
No, it's how you learn. It's how you grow. It's how you prosper.
Yeah.
Period. You have to, you have to let go of the ego, right? And that's why, like, going into the gym, I go to a CrossFit gym. I don't know about your athletes, but the guys who go in, it's most common that they end up injured because they want to lift as much as everyone else or more, right? Or lift RX.
Right.
And if I have any sort of complaint against CrossFit, it's having that RX sort of standard there, right? And like CrossFit Games, right? Which I think the CrossFit Games were just last weekend or a couple of weeks ago. This RX mentality, I don't like the RX because it really positions everyone's ego at a certain standard, right? I get it for the games, like you kind of have to have that standard of sorts, but in a normal gym where you have the moms and dads and the worker bees who are just trying to get in shape, I don't like having that standard set in place because you have people of different, body compositions, different sexes, etc., that different ages, right? It just, I think it gives you opportunity to injure yourself.
Well, from an overall fitness standpoint, getting started, let's use your example. So when you go in and you're doing any kind of explosive type movements, and that's generally what that style of training is all about. So you're doing all these functional base Olympic type movements that they created a system around that is more of a sport at this point than it is really a training methodology, even though the training methodology is legitimate. But to go to that starting point, again, goes to fear. Because when you go in there, especially because I'm not a female, as a male, at least I know I am, and I'm sure that you are, we're competitive.
Yeah.
And we're competitive by nature, designed that way because we are meant to lead. And we've talked about this before, but it doesn't mean that women aren't meant to lead either. I'm just saying from a cultural and a familial and societal standpoint, we're meant to be leaders. And so from a man's perspective, you're going in there, that's where your comment makes perfect sense about ego, is you're going in there thinking, all right, well, they've got, a 250-pound power clean that you got to do. And you're going in there and going, well, I can't do that. Well, I've been around this game enough to know that I'm not going to do that because I know that you're going to injure yourself.
Yeah.
So yes, we want to get started, but let's get started doing something that we are within our wheelhouse. That way we can work up and progress to that failure point.
Right.
Let's fail with 100 pounds as opposed to, breaking our back doing some kind of lift, right? That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
And in fact, I mean, I used to go to, CrossFit gym before I moved, right? And it took me about a year and a half before I joined another gym at all. Part was I felt like I was being disloyal to the other gym, where I had, some good friends and, with the coaches and the owner and the other athletes there. And I moved far enough away that I couldn't really, it just doesn't make sense, right? But I felt the sort of loyalty of sorts. But then I had to identify in my own mind, like I'm being disloyal to myself by not going back into the gym, right? And finding a place locally that I would be happy with. So I had spent a good year and a half, or roughly, not going into a gym, doing some maybe strength training at home, different challenges in a given month, but where I might have done a power clean, a year and a half ago at let's say 95 pounds, I'm not going to do that the first time out, right? Otherwise, I'm going to be injured again, right? Or injured, period, rather. So I have to, maybe go down to the female RX, or just do what I know is going to be a bit less, because I'm getting the movements back in, in my physical composition's mental mind, right? The muscle memory is it's re-engaging.
You're someone who's in shape, or in your training methodologies in good condition. Consider that with somebody who is just wanting to get started and they're going into whatever fitness center.
It's just trusting the process and not looking for that end result.
Yeah. And the getting through the front doors is oftentimes the hardest step for a lot of people. So hopefully this speaks to some of our guys, is like, don't hesitate from let me find the perfect gym or the perfect environment to be in. Go out there and do your searching for sure. But in order to get started at anything, and we're just using some of our references as kind of an example for you guys, but step into that fitness center is the first thing. Then go talk to a coach who's there. If you've got a trainer who's there, somebody who's knowledgeable and that you can respect. And I'm not talking about just somebody who looks the part, because there's a lot that may look particular part that don't know what the hell they're talking about. So the best thing, in my opinion, when it comes to getting started and a lot of that kind of stuff, like I said, is going through, find a place you feel comfortable with, obviously, get started, go through the door, but then also kind of get a feel for the space. So spend some time in the space, get to know your environment. And I'm not saying dip your toes in the water. I'm saying, obviously, jump in the deep end of the pool by getting there first, but is through that process, then you're going to start opening up, because again, we as guys tend to want to do things on our own. So don't bother me, let me do my own thing. Well, you may go in there wanting every intention to get started, but the things that you did when you were in your teens and 20s and 30s just aren't going to work.
I don't need to ask for directions, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's typical.
Right.
Or putting something together,
but it's just the same.
Instructions.
Again, that goes back to ego, though.
Right.
It goes back to ego. You need to ask questions, right? And you were the high school quarterback, okay, 30 years ago. Guess what? A lot's changed in 30 years.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. But that, as far as just going back a step, even still, is that starting process. That's something good to use as a trigger. So if you're mentally stuck in a place, use that as motivation. If you need to have a trigger that's going to fire you off of that sofa or your chair during your lunch break, I'm okay with that. But whatever it is just get yourself started moving with some forward momentum, because you thinking about it all day long is not going to get you to where you want to go. No. Whether it's physically, professionally, financially, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, and I commented about the process and not focusing on the end result, because there is no end result. The only end result, because we're in the journey of life, so the end result is death, right? And that's what we should be focused on. We should be focused on maybe the milestones, right? And but those milestones they're going to come, right? And they're not going to come on your schedule. They're going to come when it happens.
That's right.
right? There might be that big event or big race that you are focused on. That's a milestone. That's a moment in time. And maybe you don't hit the standard that gets you into that. There's always another opportunity, another time.
Yeah.
Again, not to focus on that. I see a lot of people, again, going back to the wanting to be a professional, on day one. It's not going to happen.
Perfectionism. Right.
Right. And it's not going to happen. So worry about, focus on learning the process and enjoying the process, because that's where your time is being spent anyway.
Well, I want to, I
Right?
want to jump in here really quick because I have an example from a really close friend of mine I want to share with everybody. I have lots from other experiences, but this one specifically jumps out because Rob is a triathlete and this person was a triathlete at a certain point in time. But we were talking about this, and if it relates, you probably jump in. But he said this very same thing you're talking about. And so here's what I'm going to bring up is that, okay, you're training for this milestone, like this race. Let's use a race as an example. So you did everything leading up to it, all the rides, all the nutrition, all the running, slept, everything. Go into the first day, did great, right? The following year, does the same program, everything exactly the same, comes that same start date, bombs out. And so frustrated, puts his shoes up, and he's like, I don't know what the hell. So my point in those two comparisons is to your, I think in many ways, your comment about it is you're getting started through the minutia of the process and working through, but these milestones, you're living the process. Don't look to be the winner. Yeah, you want to accomplish something, but one day you might feel like Superman, and one day you might feel like Superman actually show up in, I just want a nap kind of clothes. Who knows?
Yeah.
You just don't have a choice with those kinds of things.
What happens so often is, especially for those Ironman triathletes, that's the longest distance of a triathlon. It's a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a marathon run, right? It's an all-day event. You have up to 17 hours to complete it. You have these folks who are training for it, and they're looking for the perfect race. And I've seen it, I've experienced it, and I live to that belief. There is no such thing as the perfect race. You might get a flat tire. You might, your shoe laces might come untied. They might not. You might not be able to grab that water or Gatorade as you're running through the transition or the aid station. There's so many things that can go wrong that you can't control. And they say, oh, they just throw their hands up on an event that they've been training for 6 months for, and paid like literally thousands of dollars to compete in. And again, it comes down to the experience, like ability to adapt to that. Those challenges that you can't control comes during the process, right? That is a moment in time. Yes, it's the race day, but you have many other races to compete in, to try to qualify for Kona or whatever it is that qualification you're trying to get to, right? I didn't qualify for Boston Marathon during my first marathon. I wanted to. I made a valiant effort at it, but that wasn't in the cards.
Yeah.
It took it actually only took one more try, but I had, put in some good training for that. I did have a good race that qualified me for Boston, but, I knew there was other opportunities to look towards.
So let's chew on this for a second, because this is a perfect analogy to what we're talking about topic when it comes to starting, right?
Yep.
So in this case, we're talking about race and conventional racing in the triathlon or ultra triathlon programming is all those adaptions that you have to come across. So again, when it comes down to getting started, fellas, is, Rob is saying, you're not going to come out the gate being the winner of the triathlon. Some days you're going to come out and you're going to trip over your shoelaces, and then you got to figure out, am I going to get back on the bike, and those kinds of things. But don't be afraid of the idea of getting started to do all that, because it's the process in between. That's the exciting part. You're going to have to get in there and compete and win. Like
you're going to have great training days. You're going to have, shitty training days, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you went out the night before and it's just not, you had a couple of drinks too many. It's just, there's a million things that you can control that you can't control, though. It's adapting to those throughout the process. It's not every day is going to be a perfect training day, period. Right.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a professional out of the gate,
Yeah,
but
then
you're
again,
not going to be a
I might be beating
professional
it.
by not doing anything either and not trying.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. It's like, I don't want to be a dead horse here and drum the drum, but that translates across so many different topics.
And everything, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, so like the same thing in your career, with your family, all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
The one I guess quote, if you want to use it, that always stays with me and has always been kind of a beating drum in my ear is Bruce Lee in an interview is talking about being like water, right? So that's one of those things where when it comes to getting started, you don't have a point A and point Z kind of, you got all this in between. Well, there's no straight line when you're water.
Right.
You're kind of just flowing over the rocks, going through all that kind of thing. And that's what life is. You know, the end zone for us is dead.
Yep.
We're croaking, kicking the bucket. What are you going to do between then? So stop sitting on your ass and get started.
Just do it.
Failing and hurting yourself or whatever that may be. I mean, it's just, it's a process. I mean, the other part of that too, from a mental standpoint, that really sits with a lot of people is not just the unknown of it being a success of any kind, but is the fear of getting hurt in some kind of way.
Right.
Whether that's physically, emotionally, you know, whatever that may be. But when we focus on the negative side instead of the positive side, all we're just doing is feeding that negativity.
Yes.
Right. So from a getting started standpoint, let's start focusing on get started and what could potentially happen if we succeed at what we're doing. What if we don't trip over our shoes while we're putting them on to get on the bike or whatever it may be?
Exactly.
You know, instead of the what ifs on the negative, what if all this positive stuff could happen?
What if I make friends during this process?
Right.
What if I meet my future spouse?
Right.
Because I've seen it happen a million times, not a million times, but I've seen it happen countless times where, you know, a lot of athletes, they just go into a run club and they end up meeting their future bride.
Right.
I've seen it.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, hopefully we're coaching you guys and talking about some things that are kind of sitting and hitting on some areas, but just get off the sofa and let's get started on those things. Don't hesitate.
What do you want from your life? Because it's not going to stop.
Yeah, we got this started. This is our first shot from doing this blog, and we're not stopping.
So I look forward to looking at this in a few years from now and laughing, but also saying, yeah, there's some good points there. You know, timeless advice.
That's right,
and inspiration.
All right, well, that's all I've got for today.
Me too. Good to see you, Marcus, and everyone else. Don't forget, if you like this podcast, don't forget to hit the like button down below. Don't forget to also subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.